The first time I laid eyes on the old mountain house, it looked like a forgotten relic from a lost time. Perched on the edge of a misty ridge deep in the Appalachians, the 100-year-old log cabin had sagging eaves, shattered windows, and vines curling through the cracks. To most, it was an eyesore. To me, it was home. I bought it at an auction for less than the price of a used truck. The previous owner had passed with no heirs, and the county was happy to get it off their books. No mention of an HOA, no encumbrances, just a dusty deed, an outdated map, and my signature. I was eager for solitude. After years of city noise, constant notifications, and concrete, I wanted peace. Renovating the place was no small feat. I worked every weekend for months. Stripped and stained the old chestnut logs, replaced the roof with hand-cut shingles, even restored the stone fireplace using rock I carried up from the creek. I insulated the walls, laid down reclaimed hardwood flooring, and installed solar panels to keep it off-grid. I was finally near the end, finishing the interior trim, when things took a turn. It started with a knock. A woman in her 50s, dressed like she walked straight out of a Pottery Barn catalog, stood at my door with a clipboard. Blonde bob, oversized sunglasses, and a pinched expression that gave off the unmistakable aura of someone who had never been told no. "I'm Karen Witherspoon, president of the Hickory Falls Historic District Association," she said, like I was supposed to recognize her name. "You're aware your property is within our jurisdiction?" I blinked. Hickory Falls? Never heard of it. This cabin's not in a subdivision. Her smile was tight. Technically, the entire ridge falls under our oversight. We manage historic properties in this region, preservation, aesthetics, compliance, that sort of thing. I looked around at the miles of unpaved road, dense woods, and complete absence of anything resembling civilization. "There's nothing else out here." "There are boundaries," she said curtly, "and your property lies just within them. You've made unauthorized modifications. The original chimney has been altered. Modern windows. Solar panels. You'll need to pay back dues and apply for retroactive approval, or we'll have to take enforcement action." "How much are we talking?" I asked, though my instincts were already screaming. She flipped through her clipboard. "Current past due assessments total $14,870, plus penalties, and architectural review will cost another $5,000 minimum. We'll also require a hearing. Let me know if you like this story. Then, kindly subscribe this channel." I laughed. I've owned this place for less than a year. There was no HOA mentioned during the sale. She tilted her head. "That's not our problem. It's your responsibility to be informed." Then she handed me a typed notice and walked off, like the matter was settled. I spent the rest of the day digging through every scrap of paperwork I had. The deed made no mention of a homeowners association. No CC and RS. No easements. I called the county clerk the next morning, who confirmed there were no HOA filings for my parcel. Yet 3 days later, a sheriff showed up with an official-looking document, a notice to abate violation. It warned that failure to pay dues or remove unapproved modifications could result in a lien, demolition, or both. "You gotta be kidding me," I told the sheriff. He shrugged. "I'm just delivering the notice. But between you and me, this isn't the first complaint I've heard about that group. They're real territorial. Act like they own half the mountain." That was the moment I decided I wasn't going to roll over. First, I drove to the county courthouse and requested every document related to land use, zoning, and historic designations in the area. After hours of sifting through maps and microfiche, I found something odd. The Hickory Falls Historic District wasn't recognized at the county level. There was no formal incorporation, no registered board, no election records. It was basically a private club pretending to be a government body. Then it got worse. I found an old land survey from 1987, One that showed the boundaries of Hickory Falls stopped over 2 miles south of my cabin. Someone had doctored the HOA's maps to include dozens of properties never part of the original community. My parcel had been added sometime after 2011, handwritten into a copy but never filed legally. The next weekend, I returned to the cabin to gather more documents, but something felt off the moment I stepped out of my truck. The back door was open. I never left it that way. I walked in and froze. The living room had been completely rearranged. Someone had dragged in a couch, an air mattress, and even a flat-screen TV plugged into my solar battery system. There were bags of groceries in the kitchen, clothes folded neatly in a suitcase by the loft stairs. And standing in the middle of it all, Karen, what the hell are you doing in my house? I barked. She looked startled for a second, then straightened her shoulders. You abandoned the property. We assumed possession as part of a protective occupancy clause. You broke in. This is trespassing. She didn't flinch. It's community enforcement. Your property is in violation, and as such, subject to occupancy oversight until compliance is achieved. I was stunned. There's no such law. She smirked. You'll find it's common in historic preservation. That's when her son walked down the stairs, maybe early 20s, shirtless, holding a bag of chips like he owned the place. This isn't over, I said, storming out. The next day, I filed a report with the sheriff's department for unlawful entry and squatting. Then I hired a real estate attorney who confirmed everything I'd found. The HOA wasn't legitimate, had no jurisdiction, and had fraudulently expanded its boundaries. Even worse, Karen's family had been using similar tactics on other remote property owners who weren't around often enough to fight back. That's when we went public. We filed a civil suit against Karen and the HOA for trespassing, fraud, and attempted extortion. I sent copies of the forged maps to the county zoning board, the state attorney general's office, and the local news. Within a week, a reporter showed up to do a story. That story blew up online. Turns out, I wasn't the only one. 3 other landowners came forward with nearly identical experiences. One man had his tiny hunting cabin bulldozed after violating architectural code. Another family was billed $19,000 in fees they'd never agreed to. Karen had weaponized bureaucracy to control the mountain, and her HOA was a paper empire built on deception. Under mounting pressure, the sheriff's office finally served her with a cease and desist order. Her family vacated my cabin the next day, but not before trashing the kitchen, stealing tools, and cutting several wires to my solar panels. I spent weeks fixing the damage, but I wasn't deterred. The lawsuit moved forward. During discovery, we obtained internal HOA emails that revealed Karen knew full well my property wasn't in her jurisdiction. She deliberately altered documents to include it, then pushed her way in to preserve it while living there rent-free. The case went to court the following spring. My lawyer laid it all out: the forged maps, the fake enforcement notices, the unauthorized occupancy. Karen's defense crumbled quickly. By the end of the trial, the judge ruled in our favor on all counts. The HOA was dissolved. Karen was fined heavily, forced to pay damages, and barred from holding office in any incorporated organization again. But for me, the best moment came when I returned to the cabin that summer. Alone, finally. Just me, the trees, and the quiet crackle of the fire. The place felt like mine again. That experience taught me something important. People like Karen thrive on intimidation, on the assumption that others won't fight back. They dress up control as preservation and use fear of legal systems to get their way. But knowledge is power. And when you stand up, when you do the work, trace the records, call the bluff, you can tear down even the most carefully constructed lies. I came to that mountain looking for peace. I found a fight instead. But I won. And now, with no one left to harass or harangue, I get to enjoy exactly what I built: a quiet life, free from the Karens of the world, in a house that tells a story of resilience, not just mine, but the cabin's too.